Hello and welcome to this week's edition of The Mediator with me, your host, Brian West, here to give you your top 8 headlines and developing news stories that made it throughout the week. Now, these top 8 stories are only documented for records and to highlight topics for those in the business of talk radio, talk media, and those who just want to stay informed. Now, let's get to the top 8 stories that made it into The Mediator this week. Story number 1, ladies and gents. Why some people avoid the doctor's office and the effect that it has when they choose not to go. Now, a story about the people in Tismaine that relates them to the poor people in the United States could potentially spark some new debates about health care and why some people choose not to go to the doctors. Now, the story brings to life the reality that most people with minimal resources and minimal knowledge, the reality that they face, and the reality that they only live to about 50 years old. The story exposes the hidden truth that, like the Tismaine civilization in Bolivia, some people, even in the United States, whom live in poverty, are subjected to fatal diseases that they choose to live with because they refuse to see a doctor. Now, even in the revolutionary stage of healthcare breakthroughs, some people still do not believe in participating in basic medical treatment. Now, while the Affordable Care Act may not have been favored by most conservatives, this developing story may shine light on the reality that we all may have to submit ourselves to a doctor's visit, even if our beliefs conflict with the new age of medicine. The data is in that those who go to the doctors have a better chance at living longer lives. But at the end of the day, we all have a choice on whether or not to go to the doctors or not. Story number 2, who do we blame for lack of diplomacy? Now, although Donald Trump points the finger towards the Democrats for lack of diplomacy, Senator Elizabeth Warren and many onlookers see a red herring or lack of trust in the talks with North Korea. Now, in the wake of delayed action and a cry for war that could have been worse from the rogue regime, a new rule book is being written on how to deal with rogue leaders. Even though the president may be boasting about his ability to bring North Korea to the table, some Americans have their fingers crossed and see no reasons why we should be making deals with a leader who struck first, popping off missiles. This developing story is still in the infancy stage and may lead to a new instruction manual on how the United States deals with rogue regimes and rogue nations. Story number 3, China's new rule on power, and does it have anything to do with strategy? The average person may not understand the game of chess, but the truth is we all play it every day. In a new move by China to let a current sitting president rule for life, this may be a strategic move, some are saying. With so many emerging moves going on across the globe, we can't help but wonder what's fueling the new cravings for rival leaders to become the world power. This new move to have China's sitting president serve for life may be the first sign that strategy and positions of power have a lot to do with observing the weaknesses of the opponents on the chessboards, while also observing the strength within one's own country. Now, the focal point of this developing story centers around the root of how a country is governed and why they choose to make changes when analyzing their position on the global chessboard. We have to look at who's playing the game and how it's being played. Story number 4, the gift and the curse of the internet. In 1989, the breakthrough known as the internet was just emerging, but the founder has some questions about its future due to the evolution of social media. Now that the internet has caught the attention of the government in regards to net neutrality laws and regulations, the future of how we surf the web may be out of its trial and error stage. Now, although this story has been trickling in and out of the news, it's now growing because social media companies are starting to take action. Now, this story hit its peak when YouTube not only stopped monetizing some channels, but also threatened to shut down some well-known names. Let's just hope that everyone is on the same page when dealing with this still developing story and emerging issue. Story number 5. What is causing crime rates to spike? On a quest across the United States, there is one fact. The fact is that crime is increasing. So why is crime increasing when we have so many resources and programs geared at stopping it? With a handful of answers, no one really knows why, but many blame ignorance as the number one reason why crime is increasing. With so many people searching for answers, the list of solutions have many Americans wondering, why do so many innocent people keep getting dragged into criminal mess and crime mess? Now, while the focus may be on gun laws and a crackdown on drugs, Americans are now fighting a war against authorities, but may be losing the battle due to an undermanned and exhausted justice system. Although continued mass shootings bump this story up to number 5, the reality that we need to be focusing on is that ignorance is a behavior that can only be overcome by prestigious and well-informed people willing to give their time to a sinful population, which we all may be guilty of being a part of. Story number 6, the college debt issue. If you ask a new graduate this year what their plans are for the future, he or she may not mention college. Some may not see college in their future, but there have been few stories of highly educated people channeling their attention on the pros and cons of investing in the field of a higher education, investing in yourself. There's not too many mentors out there trying to lure people in to the pros or telling them the pros and cons of college. The conflict of interest in this whole ordeal is that the number one thing that people are on the quest to achieve is making fast money. Now, on this quest, the average American tires themselves out pretty quick and often give up on their dreams of being financially independent, and college debt may be holding a lot of people back from that dream. That's why this issue may be staying in the news. College debt is a reality that most Americans face. Only time will tell how this story develops. This story has been easing in and out of the news, but there is one simple fact, that the college debt issue can only be solved by earning enough money to pay the bills. The fact is that there are some pros and cons to investing in yourself, but the more time you take off, the more time you lose. I think in college they call it opportunity costs. Now let's get to the final 2 stories that made it into the media this week. Story number 7. Should drug dealers get the death penalty? On his unusual America First crusade, President Trump has created a new brand name by using talking points that get the attention of everyone who think it but keep it quiet. So basically, he's saying what some people are thinking, just don't want to say, and he's getting their attention. Now, his latest talking point about giving drug dealers the death penalty may not only shake up the American justice system, but it may tickle the arms of those holding the axe, especially those whom have been affected the most by drugs and the drug dealing process. Now, it's safe to say that not only is the Trump administration wild, but they may now have people wondering if a renegade in the White House is what the world needs to correct its hidden ideologies. The picture may now be even clearer that President Trump is rebelling against the traditional form of U.S. government policies, and that's domestic and abroad. President Trump is making a change in an unusual way, by saying some unusual things, untraditional ways. Now, the new question now is, do you punish the consumer or the dealer? So do you punish the drug consumer or the drug dealer? That's the new question that maybe Trump may be leaving out as a businessman. If your product is not good for the public, do you still sell it? And if you still sell it, should you be punished for it if it's not doing the public any good? In that case, you may have to involve some things like cigarettes, beer, and other things. So if Trump has a voice in the fight, I'm sure this will create more chaos that is already being caused on such issues. Now, this developing story is pivotal to the war on drugs and may light a new fire in the debate on how the world handles drug users and drug dealers and other issues that people face on a daily basis in regards to substance abuse. Story number 8, and the final story that made it into the media this week. Prescribing opioids for a kickback. Is it ethical? After finding out her doctor was prescribing opioids and receiving a kickback for doing so, some patients, including a woman, are now losing their trust in the decisions of the people who are in the most distinguished profession in the world. So they're starting to lose faith in doctors and people handling medicine. Getting a kickback. Is it possible? Now, in the wake of an opioid and drug crisis plaguing America and the world, once again, ethics becomes a central issue. Some kickbacks for doctors were more than $25,000, and the number of prescribed medicines that were prescribed span over 811,000 and counting. The report states that more than 200,000 physicians receive payments for prescribing medicines with opioids. The article also went in detail about the illegalities of prescribing drugs for kickback payments. The article also talked about the networks of paid speaking engagements that other doctors engaged in about the drug. While this story is reaching its peak, this may be the first time in history that a story like this has been released to the public about the field of medicine and doctors receiving kickbacks. Corruption in the most trusted field on earth is not only devastating, but it's catastrophic in regards to human ethics and trust in the field of medicine and the trust that patients have with their doctors. Now, this still leaves no reason not to see a doctor, but should draw a patient to take more control over their medical care. That means you do have a choice whether or not you take the drugs and the medicine or not. And you do have a choice in saying what drugs you feel are better for you. I want to thank you so much for tuning into the media this week, and please don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you want to show us some support, go to our website, www.method8inc.com, and either buy something, click on something, watch something, or read something. I want to thank you so much for tuning into the media this week, and please don't forget to subscribe. Have a good week, everybody.
If you need help, then dial your operator.
Have no fear, fellow citizens. The mediator